You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, got another super special, awesome human for you today, my friends. My goodness, oh man, hails from the DMV, baby. That's right, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And because this man right here, this good brother right here, this great brother right here, the chief executive and founder of Rhodes Smith Consulting. You heard that right, folks, the RSC. And this gentleman right here, he's been leading people and organizations through the process of intentional, you heard that right, folks, intentional transformation for 24 years. And just to name a few of his clients, they include Netflix, Nike, Shondaland, Sony, Warner Brothers, Bank of America, Kaiser Permanente, and more countless executives. And this young wonderful man right here, he cherishes helping people move incrementally towards sustained achievements with a special focus on technical transformations, coaching leaders and individuals to develop capabilities to realize change. So let's give it up for the one, the only IB himself. That's right, the intelligent and the brash himself when need be, the one, the only Dr. Ian Brooks. How you doing today, Dr.
Hey, I'm doing good, Tom. Heck, the way you sound, shoot, man, I'm doing great. I'm trying to match you. I appreciate that intro, man. That sounded halfway decent. Oh, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Yes, indeed. It's great to have you on, my man. Yes, indeed. Because usually, well, the intro is usually the best part of the show. And then we go off to some random directions that intentionally end us up into the lands of the penguins and the plums. So who knows? We may not end up in there today. We may
Hey,
not.
you know, even if we do, I'm sure it's going to be an enjoyable ride, and we'll have a story to tell.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of stories to tell, man, like how did you get to where you are today, man? Because it's not every day where you made a good brother. My man graduated from Morehouse College as well with his bachelor's and became a doctor. And you're helping all these great companies like freaking kids today wearing Nikes, but you actually helped out the company Nike, man. So how did it all happen, man?
Yeah, I tell you what, as we were talking offline, it happened fast. Believe me, you blink and you find yourself down this journey and path that you forged, and it's a matter of you look up and say, "Wow, I've just gone down a journey that I never expected." But really, it's for me, it started back when I was 13 years old. When I was 13, I made the decision in my mind that you know what, I wanted to know why people did what they did, and in that context, the perfect field for that was psychology, right? And understanding how people thought, how they moved, what they were saying, and what their word choices were. And so I embarked on this journey being a psychologist. So when I went to Morehouse, I got my psychology degree and was working with adolescents and youth. Then I moved when I got my master's at Auburn, University of Montgomery. I started working with adults and also doing intelligence testing and personality testing, and even worked in a 24-hour lockdown ward for adults, doing therapy, one-on-one coaching, as well as group coaching. And, at that moment, I was like, man, I don't want to work with this population anymore. I mean, it was very emotionally draining for me, but I still loved helping people. And that's always been my passion. So I then moved over to work with organizations. And that's when I originally got my doctorate in organizational psychology. So now I work with organizations like Nike, like Shondaland, like Netflix, like Bank of America, to help their leaders develop, because it's all about the behavior and the influence of what they're doing, giving back to others. And as important, I'm giving back to them by modeling through my own perspective and helping them become better. So that's also enabled me to write my book, Intention, Building Capabilities to Transform Your Story. And that's how this book was originally started, was documenting the challenges that my leaders and the people I was working with were facing. And so it's been an outstanding journey, both of assisting people, but also self-exploration as well, which quite frankly, we all have our own journeys. We have our own stories. And heck, if we end up with the house of penguins, damn it, we're gonna have some fun doing it, and have a story to tell.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And what I find interesting is that at the age of 13, you wanted to be a psychiatrist, and 30 plus years later, like you're still doing it, but in a different form, a different way, in a stronger way. And your book title, Intention, it seems like that's been the one word, the one major theme for these past few decades, man. So, my goodness. So, what helped you to keep that supreme level of focus, man?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that really enable me to keep that focus. I think the first thing is what I have a passion for. I never lost sight of what I truly enjoyed, and that was hearing people's story. Even as a kid, in my high school class, I was voted the shyest person in my high school class, and kind of, I kind of smirked at that. But it was probably true. While I knew everybody, they didn't really know who I was in that context, and I was always in the background. Always the one asking questions, but I was always there. That personality really has put built into the fabric of who I am and into what I've done. And one, helping people from a psychological perspective, because again, I have yet to meet anybody from that 24-hour lockdown ward to you and I sitting here today. I've yet to meet anybody who did not want to be better. Now, our starting points are different, right? From a chemical imbalance to working with their environments and how they're shaping their lives around medicine and routine of therapy is a lot different than the executives and one-on-one coaching I do for people outside of organizations where we're already normal, quote unquote, or we're already adjusted. And now we're just trying to be better. Now we're trying to excel. So our starting point's a little bit different, but everyone has that drive to be better. And so for me, it all started with the passion of consistently having that perspective of what do I truly enjoy? I think the second thing that really is built into why I've been able to do it for so long is that I focused on building my capabilities. The reason I also talk about capabilities in the title. So the things that I'm working on and have been passionate about for my entire career is something that I can actually transfer over to just about anything. Now, what is that? One, active listening, right? Being in tune and being in the moment, being conscious of who I'm actually speaking to. What's their word choice? Who are they as a person? Actually being able to communicate, understanding, one, asking how to be in the moment, but also communicating in a way that I'm hearing, speaking, and asking questions, not for my own benefit to do something with and hide from, but actually to move us forward. And I think the third part is it's enabled me to grow as an individual. Each experience I've explored, from my career choices, the individuals with whom I've been fortunate enough to interact with, even my own growth and journey, have afforded me a chance to learn so much about myself that I couldn't see doing anything else. I never wanted to be the one sitting behind a desk, for the 21 years. That's just not something I wanted to do. I would sit behind that desk for 2 years and do that one thing, but my interests evolve, like my job, like me, like us all. And so this role, and as a doing corporate change management, and being a coach, have afforded me to interact with people on different levels and captures my own interest. Again, going back to my own passion around my own diversity of thought, around my own growth. And it has been an outstanding experience over these last, since I was a 13-year-old making that decision to say, yep, I wanted to be a psychologist.
It's indeed powerful, man. And I love what you said there about how your interests evolved, man, because it's like a powerful way of saying it. Because the thing is, we all grow up and we still have to
Hmm.
really, truly evolve and have to make it really intentional, kind of like playing off your wonderful book, man, because it's really
Yes.
something that we all need to do. And the fact that you're able to allow your interests to evolve and basically find
Hmm.
ways to keep things creative, keep things fun, to keep things engaging for yourself over these years and counting, like with this, heck, even with writing this book. Like, I'm pretty sure there's something big on the table next for you even past this book too.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of stuff past this book, but I tell you, it's while this book just came out earlier this year here in 2021, the journey of even writing the book and what has transpired after its release has just I'm still coming to grips with it. More specifically, when I originally wrote the first version of this book, And I talk about this in the book as an exploration, just an acknowledgement of me as we all go through transformations. When I was actually writing this book initially, I had actually started to write an audiobook. And so I was writing the audiobook, and I was actually in the booth. And going back to what I acknowledged earlier, where I was voted the shyest person in the class, that also implied that I was also in the background, right? So now as an author, and even as a consultant, I have to now be out in front in a lot different ways than being that shy person, or even trained as a therapist. We're not trained to have that voice up front. It's always about the person in front of us. So even acknowledging our own thoughts in that moment, or going along that journey and sharing that with our clients, isn't necessarily poo-pooed as much as you don't share that. And so now being an author, that transformed who I was in the fabric of who I had built myself to be. So as I stepped into that audiobook writing, as I stepped into that audiobook booth, I started stumbling over myself. I started acknowledging that even the content I had written was so guided, it was so shaded, it was so unintentional and inauthentic, to the extent that when I heard the audiobook taping, I said, oh no, I can't release this because I'm missing all my points. Like I know what the points are, but if I'm auditing myself, I'm missing so much content and meat and authenticity in my own voice. And I had a choice to make. And I said, all right, what am I going to do? I can scrap this entire project and just say it was a nice journey. No one would ever need to know that I wrote it. Or secondly, I could start from scratch. Or third, I could release it. One, I knew I wasn't going to release it, so that was off the table. So now I'm left up to two choices of scrapping it all or go all the way in. And I said, you know what, I'm going all the way in. But that also reflected making some hard choices, changing the fabric and the character of who I am and who I built myself around from a career choice standpoint and how I was trained, but also my own personality. And to that extent, I rewrote the entire book. And it was because of that experience, I actually became the author the book needed me to be.
Mm.
One where I was actually making points that were more salient, they were more clear, adding in my own personality into it. That doesn't mean that the book is perfect as much as it truly is a reflection of my own thoughts and my own journey. Now, I bring that up in context of your question of writing this book and now what's next. It's because now that the book is launched and now that people are buying it and now I'm doing podcasts, I'm now even refining the capabilities of which I've been built and building from even just writing the book. Those book capabilities being owning my voice. That means putting my thoughts down on paper and not being afraid to share my thoughts. Going against even some of the stuff that we were just talking about offline, where it sometimes comes back and gets you, right? But it's not being afraid of that and acknowledging that all of our journeys are very similar in that context of we can oftentimes build our lives around the fabric of our environments and our choices and the things that have created our survival, that when we start to go down this path of transformation, we sometimes need to let go of those historical things that served a purpose at one point, but have outlived their resourcefulness in order for us to move forward. And so for me, these next steps really reflect continue to do podcasts, actually even starting to document a new version or another book, and even going around and doing more speaking and actually expanding my coaching um, portfolio more so than I have today. And that's the fun journey that this book and its release has really afforded me in building that capability of being out there and owning my voice, being in different situations to create vulnerability in myself and challenge myself in that growth perspective, as well as working with a lot of great people, some of yourself, across the globe, of whom I would not have probably put myself in the situation to do historically.
Hey, I got to commend you for that, man. Definitely owning your voice because that's something big nowadays. Like when it comes to entrepreneurship, like finding your voice, owning your
Mhm.
voice, and stepping out. And I love what you said there, which was very powerful. First time I ever heard is the fact that you had to become the author that the book needed you to be, which is something
Mhm.
I've never heard before. And it's so much power in that because sometimes it feels it like even tapping into and vulnerability, in which you mentioned about owning your own voice. It's like sometimes we have to go through certain trials, or heck, even
Mhm.
some call it a dark night of the soul, before we reach that version of ourselves that we need to be so we can get to that next level, man. So, how was that process of becoming the author that the book needed you to be for this to really shine at its brightest?
Yeah, you know what? It wasn't necessarily fun, but it was an enjoyable and rewarding process. For me, as I mentioned, it started with that audiobook and really taking a self-assessment of myself. In particular, I was coaching myself as I was listening to the audiobooks. There was 52 clips that I was listening to, and just hearing my voice, I was like, oh, God, I hate this. God, I hate this.
Yep.
And I know most people don't like hearing their voice, but I mean, truly, I didn't like my pitch. I was talking extremely fast. I'm probably talking fast now in certain ways, but it was a function of what we're even hearing myself and how I was presenting myself. And that spoke of fear. The second piece, when I was listening to that audiobook, as I mentioned as well, is that I was missing points. I wasn't giving of myself. And what I had to learn again to break the mold from a psychologist perspective is really to put myself out front and also know that I'm also putting client information out there around my clients. And so as a psychologist, one of the first things is to do no harm. Right? We don't share client names. We talk very high level around what our client stories are. But in order for someone to learn from a self-help perspective, they have to be able to see the journey of which someone took. And I didn't afford myself to do that with my clients nor with myself. And then it was, okay, what am I willing to do? So that first part was being vulnerable and honest with myself, saying, you know what, did this hit the mark? Second piece was that acknowledgement saying, making a choice. What am I willing to do now? Now that we have this information, there's no right or wrong, right? Again, as I talked about, there's a process of acknowledgement, but that choice offered me a chance to say, yes, we can move forward. That this audit that I just gave is a place of reference, not of resident.
Mm.
And it only becomes a place of resident if I don't do anything about it. So if I go down this journey and write this book, let's take this information as a place of reference. And now let's move forward. And you're going to become so much more powerful as a result of this individually. And so that journey of that acknowledgement and that vulnerability and that choice of now using that feedback I gave myself as a place of reference allowed me to then take steps to move forward, in particular, to refine the book. And in a lot of cases, it afforded me a chance to write the book for me. Whereas I was really focused on my clients before and that story and what that narrative was for them and trying to have the right words and to that right perfect sentence. But now, once I went through that assessment and made that choice to make that decision to now say, hey, I am going to write this book and I need this book to be, I need to be the author the book needs me to be, because that's what's going to talk to my audience and to the readers. I now need to write to myself and coach myself through this in no different journey than any of my clients. Just because I'm an expert does not mean that I'm not fallible. And so when I started rewriting the book, I actually put my own story in there a lot more, going into detail, being vulnerable, talking about things I had never talked about before. Now that doesn't mean I just spilled, this became a diary of sort, but it did become an exercise in telling stories that people could relate to, both for me personally, for my clients, heck, even using some fictional characters as well to make sure that, because people learn in different ways and they grapple to certain things in different ways. But it was an opportunity for me to intentionally, consciously move forward and create an experience in a book that really spoke to me and my personality, but also spoke to me as an individual who needed the coaching to move forward.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right. I was kidding, y'all. My man's got the heat, baby. He's bringing the heat, baby. That's right. You don't need to be in Miami for this heat, y'all. I'm telling you. Simon, man, bringing that heat, baby. Man, this is so solid indeed because it's so darn powerful right there. And it's so darn true about the really just those stories you shared in the book and really just getting the confidence or
Mhm.
the cojones, as some would say, just to put those in there because a lot of people may not go that route. Like, even there's probably folks right now who are looking to write a book of their own. And depending on what type it is, if even if it's like a self-help book, like is there anything else that may have helped you to really find the confidence to really put yourself out there like that and actually put your stories down and actually share some stories in addition to protecting some stories from, about your clients as well?
Yeah, I think when anyone who's going through the writing process, um, the first thing that I really had to own is my authenticity, and recognizing that when we're writing, or I found myself when I was writing, it's, am I saying the same thing other people have said? And over the years, you're going to find books that relate exactly to what you've written about, or you're writing about something in certain instances where you're having to educate yourself on. As you think about fictional books, or you're doing timepieces from a historical standpoint, so there's a lot more research that goes into that. But as we're thinking about in this particular perspective from a self-help genre, and now I'm an expert based on my experiences with my clients as well as my own experience transforming and being vulnerable. I think it's also, again, owning and being authentic to the voice you have, because there is a story to be told. And just because someone might have said it something similar, your voice might resonate more succinctly with someone else so that they're actually hearing it for the first time. I think the other piece is writing, and we touched on this earlier, is writing what you're passionate about. Like, I can talk about this stuff for days just because I'm passionate about what the questions, and as important, hearing the answers, and answers that we're going to do something with, not just some answers that will sit on the shelf and die on that vine. They're answers that we're actually taking and then doing something with. And now we're asking more questions as a result of those behaviors and actions. But that all comes from passion, because your passion will sustain you in those peaks and those valleys, because there will be peaks and valleys of the writing process where you feel like you've rewritten the same sentence 10 times, or maybe 100
Yep.
times, which I know I've done.
Yep. Yep. I know
Uh,
exactly what you're talking about.
um, and heck, even my editor caught me a couple times, and it was like, "Oh, you said the same sentence on this page." I'm like, "Well, you're right, because I like the sentence, but well, I'm glad that the one needs to be in there once." But it's those types of things that really afforded me that chance to actually be authentic in that voice. And to that extent, I had my own editor and my own editor coach to walk me through the process, because my writing was more scholastic based. It was more business side, which has a different writing style. So also being one, owning my passion, owning my voice, and putting something down on a sheet of paper, it was also having a coach to actually say, hey, we need to write this in a little bit different style. Let's add these points in, because we're not experts in everything. And how we write in one part of our life may not be right for another. And especially as we're publishing, it's something to keep in mind. And finally, it's know that we're not, to that point, we're not experts in everything, and that getting the support that we need. So for me, again, the editors that I had to really bring my voice out in a lot of different fashions, as well as the lead up from a PR perspective, prior, during, and post book launch, putting me in a position of visibility, putting myself in a place of, where do I go to get reviews? Where do I go to get people to read the book or do giveaways, et cetera, et cetera? Running social media that's outside of your own personal voice. It's those things in this book process that you kind of learn, and we kind of trip over ourselves along the way, especially in the independent book publishing space of which, or writer space of which I'm in. And so that's a learning journey in and of itself. Oh yeah, by the way, you're also learning how to write, you're learning how to publish, you're learning how to put all this together. I mean, there's so much to learn in that journey. It's also the reason why people don't do it, because they know that that's the work and time it takes. And there's a certain, again, here comes the word again, vulnerability that comes along with that. But when you are invested in that passion and really want to give back, I tell you, it's well worth the journey. And you'll learn so much about the book writing process, but as important, so much about yourself in that way.
Yeah, I could definitely say that again. So if I heard you correctly, you said an editing coach and an editor?
Yeah, yeah. So I had an editing coach. So she was an editor and a coach. So she was coaching me on the writing process. But I also had a separate editor who focused more on the marketing side. So my editor and slash coach, she and I worked together for 4 years, right throughout the entire process actually. But as I got closer to the end, when I wrote the second version of this book, and the one that's out now that everyone has, I actually got a separate editor who was focused on the character build to make sure I had a nice flow, that it was engaging, that it had a natural fit. Because after writing this for so long, even my coach can also become stale to the content and just kind of going through things so quickly that, oh, yeah, we just read that part. I'm just going to skim through versus someone who's actually looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. And in this particular case, from a marketing and that fun kind of way, is also looking at it from also a different professional lens as well. So that also afforded me a chance to get a new perspective. And it didn't depart so much from the writing process. And it really enhanced the book with the complement of both individuals. I tell you, it's really, really helpful.
It's freaking powerful right there. It's so powerful right there. Because that's the thing. Like, if you really want to have a book done right, it does take a freaking village. It does take a village. You just can't like they. Yeah, you can say self-published. I mean, yeah, you can go find a printer, print it out, but like, you it takes a lot. You gotta have an
Yes.
editor. You gotta have all the folks you mentioned, and probably even more you haven't even mentioned.
Yeah, that absolutely. And that's just on the writing side. It's, also the people who just support you in general. I know there's a lot of companies out there that are available to will write your book for you and still will label it self-published and so forth. That's perfectly fine. I know that there's a lot of dialogue, and I know people have different perspectives on that, on having someone write the book for you versus you writing the book for yourself. If you have the time, and because I know time is the biggest factor, but if you have the time and you have the patience with yourself, I'm confident that you can put down your true thoughts on a sheet of paper, and you don't have to be, Pulitzer winning writer. All you have to do is just have a message, and it'll be well worth it. And then from a secondary perspective, if that time and effort just isn't there, those companies are outstanding to write whatever your thoughts are. But I tell you, there's something to be said when I pick up my book and I say, you know what, you can say what you want about the book, but I can say I wrote everything in here and I know everything that's in this, word for word. And there's a certain level of pride of both of the content that's in it, as well as its use maybe as a doorstop some days. But I can honestly say that I'm proud of this, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. The good thing about books, they don't go in the trash. A business card probably most likely would, but not a book, buddy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And heck, even downloading on the ebook or hearing the audiobook, they're always there. And for my book, I recognize that when people read it, one of the big things that I'm very conscious about and was very intentional about is that this book offers a guide, for people's experience, and it's to master their expectations and align their behaviors, and it's through questions and exploration. But once you get through this one time, this isn't a book that just sits on the shelf. It offers, in that next transformative state, situation, or context, this book offers not an opportunity to inform, but offers a reminder. And so when you pick up, there are summary pieces in the book where you can just read through the summaries to be reminded of things to think about on that journey, on that next situation. And from that, it offers that ability to, again, re-engage, create consciousness of what is it that you're intentionally moving towards. And so, to your very acknowledgement, books aren't meant to be thrown away, but we don't necessarily always pick books up. this book is intended to offer and inform for that first read, but then as a reminder, as we think about new situations we're placed in and the changes and transformations we're trying to undertake.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. That's right. That's what I'm talking about indeed. So, as this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question that you wish you be asked more often when you're on the guest side of the game on these podcasts?
I think it's I don't necessarily know that there's a question now to be always asked. I think it's one thing that while I'm have written the book in the context of a very linear fashion, and one of the things that we often lose sight of, that this is a cyclical and non-linear process where it's more like a zigzag backwards and forward. It's kind of like doing an 8-point turn in your car. um it's some days with a bug, some days with a windshield. And when we realize that, it's acknowledging that that's our process. And I think that's even very clear as we think about the foundations we're laying, and even writing our books, that our ideas are going to evolve, and what we start off with may not and likely will not be what we end up with. And I think that's the biggest question that we sometimes miss, or when I'm talking podcast, that I believe as listeners, readers, to give ourselves that patience, because we don't live in a world of patience. We live in a world of immediacy, of I just need. And sadly, those needs probably aren't real. They're probably wants that we have defined as needs. And so when we're actually talking about transformation, when we're actually even talking about writing our books and putting our thoughts down, being very clear on what that purpose is, giving ourselves the patience, and making sure that we do not confuse our wants with our needs, and getting our ideas out there.
Yo, that's right. Don't confuse your wants and your needs, y'all. That's right. That's right. Even if the measurements are correct with a 36, 26, 40, man, like, no, you may want it, but they may not be what you need
That,
because the
that's
head
that
may
that's
not be
right.
right.
That's right, because heck, that may not have a shelf life. That may not grow old. Heck, wine that may age well. Wine and cigars age well. I can't say some of that other stuff. Yes, sir.
Mhm. That's right. Especially now where you can get all the equipment you want.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct.
Oh, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, folks need to equip themselves and buy this fabulous book. Buy a copy or two or 20 or 200. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your cat, share it with the camel or something. So that way they can intentionally soar and transform into their freaking greatness. My goodness,
Yes.
indeed. Because the man's got the power going right here, y'all. I'm telling you, the man's going to help you get those 8-pack abs of intention, y'all. That's right. That's right. Those intentional abs, y'all. That's right.
That's right. Heck, yeah, you want to talk about intention? That is truly intention and deliberate. So, man, there's certain. But yeah, you are absolutely correct.
Oh, man. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021, with all of your knowledge, education, and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
The advice I give myself are two things. The first being, you're on the right track. Continue moving down and thinking in a context of how you're thinking around life. In that context of being intentional around your direction and what you're looking at from a career standpoint. My second piece of advice would be expand that lens. Expand that lens in particular around how do you define family and defining your voice. You're good enough as it is. You don't need anything else. What you're doing now is extra. So while the carrot is the career and the schooling, recognize that expansion around family and that confidence of self integrate that, you'll be well on your way to where you want to be.
Stop talking about indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's right, y'all. That's right. That carrot and the stick be good sometimes. We be thinking we rabbits, but nah, fam. Like sometimes you gotta just
That's right.
pause for a second and realize, hey, let me make sure my why is in order here. Let me make sure the main thing is truly the main thing here.
That's right. And again, sometimes that main thing obscures other things in our life. We get so focused on it, we lose sight of the bigger picture. And then we look up one day and we're down the path and like, I arrived exactly where I planned, but that may not be where I want to be. And now let's go and re-look at life with open eyes and the confidence that, you know what, we have a choice to make. So let's make the choice and move forward. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Tell you, my man's got this hot five, baby. Telling you, y'all. Telling you. Like, stick my man in on that Olympic torch, man. He'll be going that five forever, man. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, that good five, man. That's right. So, for those who want to catch some of that metaphorical fire and buy some copies of the book and keep up with all the stuff that the good doctor is doing, what's the best way for folks to reach out to the Dr. I himself?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to reach out to me. Through all the, obviously, social media is probably the quickest way. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Dr. B _intention. Again, that's Dr. B _intention. If you're not on any of those SEO links, which would be, I'd be surprised, you can also find updates around things I'm doing on my website. That's at rhodessmith.com. That's RHODESSMITH.com. There you'll find links to this wonderful podcast and others. You'll find updates around my book, as well as my coaching practice, both my one-on-one coaching as well as my group coaching that I conduct. On there as well, you can submit a form and ask me any questions that you like. Otherwise, you can also find my book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble under Intention, Building Capabilities to Transform Your Story. There you'll find this paperback version. There's also an ebook available as well. And coming out shortly, you'll also have a chance to get the audiobook. So that's under wraps as well.
That's right. You heard that right, ladies. You get to hear his voice a little longer, y'all. That's right. That intention, boy. That's what I'm telling you. It's going to be great, y'all. It's going to be great with all the Oz, baby. Pick up this book. That's right, y'all. I'm telling you. Pick it up. That's right. Pick it up like you're going to pick up your son in that one movie, School Dance, y'all. Just come up. Like, I can't pick up my son. You pick up the book, be like, yeah, this book is good. And you put it back down. And then you see, like, I'm going to be back next year to pick up my son. I'm telling you, it's good. I was messing with you. Don't do that. Pick up the book, read it, tell your friends about it, review the book.
Yes. Oh, that's funny.
So many party words for close up shop, man.
Hey, you know what? Great conversation. But you know what? I'll leave us with a quote. As you said, try to spit words of wisdom and insight. But the one quote I like to leave us with is, "He who does not lay his foundations beforehand may by great abilities do so afterwards, although with great trouble to the architect and danger to the building." And that was written by Niccolo Machiavelli in 1532. I'll leave you with that quote to say, you know what, regardless of what you do, you're good enough, but you're building your foundations. Remember that when you're going through your transformations, that you can do so afterwards, but you're oftentimes having to course correct the choices you made before and even the choices you made afterwards. And so as a result, just consider that as you move forward. Best of luck to you with your own intentions.
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, donbrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep going north.